23 years of sweat, sacrifice, and sleepless nights. That's what I gave Marcus Sterling's construction company. And how did he repay me? By handing my job to his spoiled daughter who couldn't tell a blueprint from a grocery list. But he forgot one thing: I knew where all the bodies were buried. And I had friends in very high places. My name is Vera Walsh, and at 54, I thought I'd seen every dirty trick in the construction business. I was wrong. The conference room at Sterling Construction felt colder than usual that Tuesday morning. Marcus Sterling sat at the head of the mahogany table, his silver hair perfectly styled, but his eyes avoiding mine completely. Around the table sat the usual suspects: the VP of Finance, the head of legal, and surprisingly, Marcus's daughter Jessica, fresh out of college with a business degree and zero real-world experience. "Vera," Marcus began, his voice carrying that rehearsed tone I'd heard him use with difficult clients. "We've been discussing the company's future direction." I set down my coffee, untouched. 23 years with this man, and I could read him like a set of blueprints. This wasn't going to be good. "We need fresh perspectives. New energy," he continued, still not meeting my eyes. "The construction industry is evolving, and we need leadership that understands modern business dynamics." My stomach dropped. I'd heard this speech before, delivered to other longtime employees who'd suddenly become outdated. "We're promoting Jessica to Senior Vice President of Operations, effective immediately." The words hit me like a wrecking ball. Jessica? The same girl who'd asked me last month if concrete and cement were the same thing? The one who thought load-bearing walls were just a suggestion? "Marcus," I said carefully, "Jessica is bright, but she doesn't have the experience." "The decision is final," he cut me off. "We appreciate everything you've done for Sterling Construction, Vera. Your dedication has been noted." Noted. 23 years of building his empire from a small family business into a $200 million operation, and I was noted. I sat through the rest of that meeting in silence, nodding when appropriate while my mind raced. In my jacket pocket, I could feel the business card I'd been carrying for 6 months, a card that suddenly felt like my lifeline. After the meeting, I walked back to my office, the same corner office I'd occupied for a decade. Through the windows, I could see the city skyline dotted with buildings I'd helped construct. The Meridian Tower, the Harborview Complex, the new courthouse, all projects I'd managed from foundation to ribbon cutting. I closed my door and pulled out the card. Richardson and Associates, Premier Construction Consulting. 6 months ago, at an industry conference, David Richardson had approached me with a proposal I'd politely declined. Now, it looked like providence. Marcus had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He'd forgotten that in construction, relationships are everything. And I'd spent 2 decades building the strongest network in the city. Time to make some calls. I started at Sterling Construction in 2001, when it was just Marcus and 12 employees working out of a converted warehouse. We weren't glamorous. We took the projects nobody else wanted, the tight deadlines, the impossible sites. But we had hunger, and I had a plan. My first major win came in 2003. The city was accepting bids for a new police station, and everyone said we were too small to compete. The established firms had connections, track records, million-dollar bonuses for city officials. We had determination and a cost-cutting strategy that would save taxpayers 30%. I spent 3 months learning every detail of that project. I visited the site daily, studied traffic patterns, researched material suppliers, even interviewed retired cops about what they really needed in a modern facility. When bid day came, we didn't just offer the lowest price, we offered the smartest solution. We won. And that $15 million project put Sterling Construction on the map. Over the years, I built more than buildings, I built relationships. Every project manager, every city inspector, every supplier knew they could count on Vera Walsh's word. When other contractors cut corners, we delivered quality. When deadlines seemed impossible, we found a way. During the 2008 recession, while competitors laid off half their workforce, I convinced Marcus to keep everyone employed. I personally negotiated payment deferrals with suppliers, restructured our debt, and took a 50% pay cut to keep our people working. We not only survived, we thrived, picking up contracts from failed competitors. By 2015, I was running operations for the largest independent construction firm in the state. We had 200 employees, projects in 6 cities, and a reputation that was absolutely bulletproof. Mayors called me directly. When the governor needed an emergency school built after a hurricane, he called me, not Marcus. That should have been a warning sign. About 2 years ago, Jessica started showing up at project sites uninvited. At first, I thought Marcus was just trying to give her some real-world experience. But it quickly became clear she had no interest in actually learning construction. She'd arrive in designer heels and pristine white hard hats, take Instagram photos with workers, then disappear back to the office. She'd interrupt safety briefings with suggestions that made no sense. She once asked a crane operator if we could make the building taller on one side for better aesthetics. I watched grown men try not to laugh. But Marcus was blind to it all. His little princess could do no wrong. When I tried to redirect her to training programs or entry-level positions, he accused me of being resistant to new ideas. The final straw came 3 months ago. Jessica proposed moving our main office to a trendy downtown loft, a building with no parking, no storage space, and no accessibility for our heavy equipment. The lease would cost us triple what we were paying, but it would look good on social media. When I explained why it was impractical, she went crying to Daddy about my negative attitude. That's when I knew my days were numbered. Not because I was failing, but because I was threatening the narrative Marcus wanted to believe about his daughter. But he'd forgotten something crucial. In construction, the foreman might get the credit, but it's the project manager who knows where all the problems are buried. And I knew every secret Sterling Construction had. My phone rang at 6:47 a.m. on a Saturday. I almost didn't answer. Weekends were sacred, and I'd been looking forward to sleeping in for the first time in months. But the caller ID showed David Richardson. Vera, his voice was warm but urgent. I hope I didn't wake you, but I needed to reach out. Word travels fast in our business. I sat up in bed, immediately alert. What have you heard? That Sterling Construction is making some interesting personnel changes. And that you might finally be ready to have that conversation we started 6 months ago. David Richardson wasn't just any consultant. His firm had quietly engineered some of the biggest construction deals in the Southeast. When major corporations needed someone to navigate complex projects, Richardson and Associates was their first call. And for the past 2 years, he'd been trying to convince me to join him. Why don't we meet for coffee? I suggested. I think I might finally be ready to listen. We met that afternoon at a quiet cafe in Buckhead. David was already seated when I arrived, his silver beard neatly trimmed, his eyes sharp with intelligence. He'd built his reputation on reading people, and I could tell he was studying me carefully. Vera, he said after we'd ordered, I'm going to be direct with you. Marcus Sterling just made one of the stupidest decisions I've seen in 30 years of business. I raised an eyebrow. You work fast. In our industry, information is currency. And right now, you're the most valuable free agent in Georgia construction. He leaned forward. Here's what I know. Sterling Construction has 3 major contracts worth $180 million combined. The Brookhaven Medical Center, the airport expansion, and the waterfront development project. All 3 came to Sterling because of your reputation, not Marcus's. He was right. Each of those clients had specifically requested me by name. Here's what Marcus doesn't know, David continued. The Brookhaven board is already nervous about timeline delays. The airport authority is frustrated with communication breakdowns. And the waterfront developers? They've been asking questions about project leadership for weeks. My coffee grew cold as he spoke. I'd been so focused on the betrayal that I hadn't considered the bigger picture. These clients hadn't just hired Sterling Construction, they'd hired me. I have a proposal, David said, sliding a folder across the table. Richardson and Associates is expanding into full-service construction management. We need someone with your expertise to head the new division. Full operational control, equity stake, and a client base that's ready to follow you. I opened the folder. The offer was generous, more than generous. But it was the client list that made me pause. 5 major corporations, all of whom had approached Richardson specifically asking about my availability. They've been watching Sterling's recent changes with concern, David explained. Quality leadership is rare in our business, Vera. When it becomes available, smart companies move fast. I thought about Jessica, probably at that moment posting another selfie from a construction site, completely oblivious to the complexities of the project around her. I thought about Marcus, so blinded by nepotism that he couldn't see the empire crumbling beneath his feet. "There's one condition," I said finally. "I won't actively sabotage Sterling. But I also won't protect them from the consequences of their own decisions." David smiled. "I wouldn't ask you to. Sometimes the best revenge is simply success." I signed the consulting agreement that evening. The contracts would be finalized within 2 weeks, and the announcement would go public shortly after. By the time Marcus realized what was happening, it would be too late. But first, I had some phone calls to make. Monday morning arrived with a crisp Atlanta breeze and the kind of clarity that comes from finally seeing the path forward. I spent the weekend reaching out to key contacts, not to gossip or complain, but to inform them of my career transition in the most professional way possible. The first call came at 8:23 a.m. My phone buzzed with a number I recognized immediately: Sarah Chen, project director for the Brookhaven Medical Center. "Vera," her voice was tense. "I just got the strangest call from someone named Jessica Sterling. She wanted to touch base about our project timeline." I kept my voice neutral. "Oh." She asked if we could move the MRI suite to the 3rd floor because it would have better lighting for photographs. Sarah's frustration was evident. "Vera, MRI machines weigh 12 tons. They have to be on the ground floor with reinforced concrete foundations." She didn't know that. My heart sank. Jessica had lasted exactly 3 business days before revealing her complete incompetence to our most important client. "Sarah," I said carefully, "I want you to know that I'm transitioning away from Sterling Construction. I'll be joining Richardson and Associates as their new head of construction management." The silence stretched for several seconds. "Then, when do you start?" By noon, my phone was ringing constantly. The airport authority called at 11:15, concerned about leadership changes on their expansion project. The waterfront development team called at 11:47, asking pointed questions about project continuity. Each conversation was professional, but the subtext was clear: they'd hired me, not Sterling Construction. At 2:18 p.m., my phone rang with a call from Sterling Construction's main line. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. And another. The voicemail was from Marcus himself, his usual confidence replaced by something I'd never heard before: panic. "Vera, we need to talk. There's been some misunderstanding about your role here. Please call me back immediately." I deleted the message without hesitation. At Richardson and Associates, David and I spent the afternoon finalizing transition plans. The beauty of construction consulting is that relationships are portable. When clients trust an individual, they're willing to follow that person to ensure project success. "The Brookhaven board is meeting Thursday," David informed me. "They're going to discuss their options regarding the Sterling contract. Technically, they can terminate for cause if they lose confidence in project leadership." I wasn't surprised. In construction, trust is everything. Once it's lost, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. "The airport authority is scheduled to review their vendor agreements Friday," he continued. "And Waterfront Development has called an emergency meeting for next week." My phone buzzed again: Sterling Construction. This time I answered. "Vera Walsh." "Vera, thank God." It was Marcus, and he sounded desperate. "We need to meet. Right now. There's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Marcus. You made your position clear. Jessica is your new head of operations. I'm sure she'll figure it out." "Vera, please. The clients are calling. They're asking questions." "Then I suggest you have Jessica field those calls. After all, she's the one with fresh perspectives and modern business dynamics." I hung up before he could respond. That evening, I sat on my apartment balcony overlooking the city skyline. Tomorrow, the real storm would begin. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: peace. The news broke on Thursday morning like a perfectly controlled demolition. The headline in the Atlanta Business Chronicle read, "Brookhaven Medical Center terminates Sterling Construction contract over leadership concerns." I was in David's office when his phone started buzzing with calls from reporters. The story was spreading fast, not just because of the size of the contract, but because of what it represented. Sterling Construction, once considered unshakable, was showing cracks in its foundation. The airport authority just called, David's assistant informed us. They're accelerating their vendor review to this afternoon. I wasn't surprised. In construction, when one major client loses confidence, others quickly follow. It's like a building collapse. Once the structural integrity is compromised, the entire structure becomes unstable. My phone rang. Marcus Sterling, of course. I let it ring. By lunch, the airport expansion contract was officially under review. By 3 p.m., the waterfront development team had scheduled an emergency board meeting. By 5 p.m., Jessica Sterling had locked herself in her office and refused to take any calls. Vera. David looked up from his computer screen. You need to see this. The stock ticker for Sterling Construction's parent company was down 18%. The financial reporters were calling it a crisis of confidence in leadership transition. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Please. I showed David the message. He shook his head. Too late for damage control. The market has spoken. That evening, I received a call from someone I hadn't expected, Tom Bradley, one of Sterling's longest-serving project managers. He'd worked under me for 15 years, and I respected him immensely. Vera, his voice was quiet, almost conspiratorial. I'm calling from my car in the parking lot. It's chaos in there. Jessica spent 2 hours crying in the conference room. Marcus has been screaming at anyone who'll listen. And 3 more clients called today asking about project leadership. I felt a pang of sympathy for the employees caught in the middle. These were good people who'd done nothing wrong except work for a man whose ego had clouded his judgment. Tom, I said, if you ever want to discuss opportunities elsewhere, you know how to reach me. That's actually why I'm calling. Half the senior staff is updating their resumes. We know how this story ends. Friday brought more bad news for Sterling Construction. The waterfront development contract, worth $65 million, was officially terminated. The stated reason was concerns about project management continuity, but everyone in the industry knew the real story. David and I spent the day fielding calls from potential new clients. Word was spreading that Richardson and Associates had secured the industry's most respected construction manager. 3 Fortune 500 companies requested immediate meetings about upcoming projects. The Sterling contracts are just the beginning, David explained as we reviewed our pipeline. Your reputation is opening doors we couldn't have reached otherwise. At 6:47 p.m., my phone rang one final time with a call from Sterling Construction. This time, I answered. Vera Walsh. Vera. The voice was broken, defeated. Marcus Sterling sounded like a man watching his life's work crumble. Name your price. Whatever you want. Equity, salary, complete operational control. Just come back. I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline, lit against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, crews were working on projects I'd initiated, using systems I'd developed, following safety protocols I'd implemented. Marcus, I said quietly, you had the most loyal, experienced, connected operations manager in the state. And you threw it away for nepotism. There's no coming back from that. But the company will survive or it won't. That's no longer my concern. I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new projects to build. But tonight, the 23-year chapter of my career at Sterling Construction was finally, officially closed. And I'd never felt more free. 6 months later, Richardson and Associates had become the fastest-growing construction management firm in the Southeast. Our client roster read like a who's who of major corporations, and our project pipeline extended 2 years into the future. I stood in my new corner office, watching crews break ground on our latest project, a $150 million mixed-use development that would have been perfect for Sterling Construction. If they still existed. Vera. David knocked on my open door. Have a minute? He held up a copy of the Atlanta Business Journal. The headline made me pause. Sterling Construction Files Chapter 11, Cites Leadership Challenges. I scanned the article. The numbers were devastating. After losing their 3 major contracts, Sterling had struggled to secure new work. Their reputation for reliability, built over decades, had crumbled in months. Smaller clients had jumped ship, vendors had tightened credit terms, and talented employees had fled to competitors. Jessica Sterling had resigned after just 4 months, citing strategic differences with company direction. Marcus had tried to rebuild, but without the relationships and expertise that had made the company successful, he was fighting a losing battle. "There's more," David said, handing me a second article. "They're liquidating assets next month. The equipment auction is scheduled for the 15th. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction, certainly, justice had been served. But also sadness for the good people who'd lost their jobs, and for what Sterling Construction could have been under different leadership. "Tom Bradley called this morning," I continued. "He wanted to thank you personally. He's landing on his feet with Morrison Construction, and he got 6 of his team members placed there too." That news lifted my spirits. The talented people from Sterling were finding new opportunities, and the industry was better for it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen at Brookhaven Medical. "New medical center opening ceremony is next month. Hope you can attend. This project wouldn't have happened without you." I smiled. The Brookhaven project was now being completed by Richardson and Associates, on time and under budget. The airport expansion was ahead of schedule. The waterfront development had become a model for sustainable construction practices. "There's something else," David said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "We've been approached about a major opportunity. The state is soliciting bids for a new veterans hospital. $300 million project, 3-year timeline." He slid a folder across my desk. "They specifically requested Richardson and Associates. And they specifically mentioned your track record with complex medical facilities." I opened the folder and scanned the project requirements. It was exactly the kind of challenging, meaningful work that had drawn me to construction in the first place. A chance to build something that would serve our veterans for generations. "When do we start?" I asked. David grinned. "Proposal is due in 6 weeks. If we win, it'll be the largest contract in the firm's history." That evening, I drove past the former Sterling Construction headquarters. The building sat empty, a for-lease sign askew in the front window. Through the glass doors, I could see cardboard boxes stacked in what used to be the reception area. I didn't feel triumph or vindication. I felt clarity. Marcus Sterling had made a choice, to prioritize family politics over business excellence. The market had rendered its verdict swiftly and decisively. But I hadn't destroyed Sterling Construction. I'd simply stopped protecting it from the consequences of its own decisions. The difference matters. At a red light, my phone chimed with a LinkedIn notification. Someone had endorsed me for strategic leadership. The name caught my eye, Marcus Sterling. I scrolled to his profile. His title now read simply consultant. His company affiliation was blank. His most recent activity was sharing an article about the importance of experienced leadership in construction. Too late, Marcus. Some lessons can only be learned through loss. I drove home to my new penthouse apartment, the city lights spreading out below me like a constellation of possibilities. Tomorrow, I'd start working on the Veterans Hospital proposal. Next month, I'd break ground on 3 new projects. Next year, Richardson and Associates would probably double in size again. I'd built one empire and watched it crumble due to others' poor judgment. Now I was building another, one based on merit, experience, and the relationships that truly matter in business. Some stories end with dramatic confrontations or moral reckonings. Mine ended with something better: success, earned the right way, with the right people for the right reasons. The rest was just construction. 1 year later, I stood at the podium of the Georgia Construction Industry Awards banquet, holding a crystal trophy that read Lifetime Achievement Award. The ballroom was filled with everyone who mattered in our industry: contractors, architects, city planners, and suppliers who'd watched my career unfold over 2.5 decades. "This award," I said into the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces, "represents more than individual achievement. It represents the power of relationships, integrity, and the belief that excellent work speaks for itself." In the audience, I spotted familiar faces. Sarah Chen from Brookhaven Medical, giving me a thumbs up. Tom Bradley, now thriving at Morrison Construction, beaming with pride. David Richardson, who become not just a business partner but a dear friend. And in the back corner, trying to remain inconspicuous, sat Marcus Sterling. Our eyes met for just a moment. He looked older, worn down by the weight of watching his life's work dissolve. I felt no anger toward him anymore, just a profound sadness for opportunities lost and relationships squandered. After the ceremony, as I mingled with colleagues and clients, I felt a gentle touch on my arm. I turned to find Marcus standing behind me, his expression humble and uncertain. "Vera," he said quietly. "Congratulations. You deserve this." "Thank you, Marcus." We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I made a terrible mistake. I know that now. I let family cloud my judgment, and it cost me everything I'd built. But more than that, it cost me the best partner I ever had." I studied his face, seeing genuine remorse for perhaps the first time. "Marcus, I never wanted Sterling Construction to fail. I just wanted to be valued for what I brought to the table." "You were more than valued. You were the backbone of the company, and I was too proud to admit it." He paused, gathering courage. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I understand what I lost." The conversation was interrupted by a young woman approaching us. She wore a sharp business suit and carried herself with confidence, but her eyes were uncertain. "Excuse me," she said. "Ms. Walsh? I'm Jennifer Hayes from Hayes Construction. I was wondering if I could have a moment of your time." I recognized the name. Hayes Construction was a small but growing firm specializing in sustainable building practices. Jennifer was the founder's daughter, but unlike Jessica Sterling, she'd earned her position through years of ground-level experience. "I've been following your career," Jennifer continued, "and I'd love to discuss a potential collaboration on green building initiatives." As we talked, I noticed Marcus listening intently. When Jennifer mentioned her 5 years working as a project coordinator before taking on management responsibilities, I saw something flicker in Marcus's eyes, recognition of the path his own daughter should have taken. After Jennifer left with my business card and a promise to schedule a meeting, Marcus spoke again. "She reminds me of you when you were starting out. Hungry, smart, willing to learn." "She's earned her place," I replied. "That makes all the difference." Marcus nodded slowly. "It does. I see that now." The evening wound down with handshakes, business cards, and promises to stay in touch. As I gathered my things to leave, Marcus approached one final time. "Vera," he said, "I know it's too late for apologies to change anything. But I want you to know that watching you succeed, seeing how the industry has embraced your leadership, it's helped me understand what real business success looks like. Not nepotism, not politics, just excellence recognized and rewarded." I extended my hand, and he shook it firmly. "I wish you well, Marcus. I truly do." As I drove home that night, trophy secured in the passenger seat, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 2 years ago, I'd felt discarded, replaced by someone's unqualified daughter. Tonight, I was recognized as one of the industry's most accomplished leaders. The revenge hadn't been elaborate or dramatic. It had been simple, excellence, properly applied, in an environment that valued it. When Marcus chose nepotism over merit, the market corrected that decision swiftly and decisively. Richardson and Associates now employed 150 people across 4 states. We'd completed over $2 billion in projects, all on time and under budget. The Veterans Hospital I'd helped design was serving thousands of former service members. 3 universities had asked me to teach construction management courses. Most importantly, I'd proven something to myself and to every woman in this male-dominated industry: competence, integrity, and hard work create their own opportunities. You don't need to tear others down to build yourself up. You just need to be undeniably good at what you do. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Hayes. "Thank you for the conversation tonight. Would love to schedule that meeting next week. The future of construction needs leaders like you." I smiled and set the phone aside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to build something meaningful. But tonight, driving through the city I'd helped shape with concrete and steel, I felt something profound. Completion. The story wasn't about revenge after all. It was about recognition, of talent, of dedication, of the simple truth that excellent work, given time and opportunity, will always find its rightful place. Some foundations are built to last. Others crumble under their own poor construction. I'd learned to tell the difference.